focus of Chapter 3 is on the structure of the federal budget. We will examine federal spending and analyze if the budget process has been a tool to control spending. Major legislation to control the federal process over time has included the Budget and Accounting Act of 1921, the Congressional Budget and Impoundment Control Act of 1974, the Balanced Budget and Emergency Deficit Control Act of 1985, the Budget Enforcement Act of 1990, the Statutory Pay-As-You-Go Act of 2010, and the Budget Control Act of 2011. As you can see, Congress has tried to control spending through legislation many times throughout its history, mostly to not very good solutions. A key part of the budget process at the federal level is the committee system. Fiscal committees of Congress are responsible for the structuring of the laws that actually provide the ability of the federal government to spend money. We will consider the impact of deficit spending. One question to consider is, do deficits really matter? Chapter 4 looks at differences between the federal government budget process and the authority and subnational authority to tax and spend. Subnational governments, including state and local governments, operate in open economies. Economic activity and population served can easily move across jurisdictional boundaries. In other words, if you live in Alabama and you don't like the taxes here, you could move to Florida. If you don't like living in Troy, you could move to Montgomery or anywhere else within the state, and your taxing requirements will likely change. The national government, when pushed to it, can actually create spending power out of thin air. It can print money. That is something not available to states or localities. The national governments frequently establish limits on the fiscal powers of the lower tiers. In other words, national governments can put requirements on state or sub-state governments. This is usually not the case in the United States, but is the case in other countries. In the U.S., most spending at the state and local level is for general government purposes, including education. State and local governments face restrictions related to deficit spending. In most locations, governments are required to enact a balanced budget. Balanced budget requirements and the closed economies of state and local governments can create many challenges. Part of what we will look at in this week and other weeks is the budget process for the town of Bucksport, Maine. It's a small coastal town in Maine that at one point had a large paper mill in it that operated for nearly 100 years. The mill closed in 2014. Prior to the mill's closing, the mill provided nearly 40% of the town tax revenue. The loss of that revenue had a huge impact on the town economy. And the lecture for this week includes a video that talks about the impact that this loss had on the community.